You all came out on Super Bowl Sunday. Good for you. To reward you, I will be one of the pastors that doesn't pray for one team to win over the other. Is that good? Okay. Just kidding. We should have done that as to open our series. Well, I'm really excited because this morning we're starting our 8-week series, For the Bible Tells Me So, and it's going to be so much fun because we're going to look each week at a saying or a belief that's really common in the church, but isn't necessarily helpful or isn't truthful or biblical. And we're going to dive deeper into those sayings and talk about where they came from and try to think about what the Bible might have to say that's better than what we've heard, and how we as the church can live this life of faith a little bit differently. So I want to begin this morning with a story. When I was a senior in high school, everything was looking up, and I was wrapping up classes and gearing up to go to college. I was all set to go to Seattle Pacific, and everything was just perfect. And then my grandpa passed away. He was the first person in my life that I had known really well who passed. And it was really hard for me, and he had died of cancer, and it was this really quick and painful thing. And then, not too long later, my dad was diagnosed with cancer and started treatment, and everything became just a lot, and I wasn't quite sure how to handle it all. And I remember one day I went to school. I went to a Christian high school, and I went into one of my classes, and they were taking prayer requests, and I raised my hand, and I started talking about what was happening, and I just fell apart sobbing, like just ugly crying in the classroom, and everyone was super awkward about it. Like, here's a girl crying. We don't know what to do. Evidently, the teacher felt the same way because he kind of looked at everyone and said, okay, class, don't worry. God does not give anyone more than they can handle. So, Kate, don't worry. You're going to be able to handle all this. Has anyone ever been in a situation where you were dealing with something really difficult and someone said, God doesn't give you more than you can handle? Yeah, all of us. Did it help you at all? No? Did it make you feel better? Yeah, it didn't for me either. And I think that's because it's not really meant to. I feel like, in my experience, even though all of us have experienced this, and we all know that this isn't helpful and it's not comforting, we still don't really know what else to say when someone's going through something difficult, and this is what we've been taught to say, right? So this is what we still hear so often in the church. God won't give you more than you can handle. But the problem with this saying is that even though it's meant to bring peace or comfort, it often causes harm. Because when people hear this, when it's said to them, what they hear is, you're supposed to be strong enough to handle this. God wouldn't have given it to you if you didn't have everything it took for you to handle it yourself, your own strength, right? So if they can't handle it, if they need to ask for help, they think that something is wrong with them. And they quickly learn not to talk about the things that they might need help with in the church because they'll be shamed for that. And you add on the idea that God is the one who gave them these hard things, then you add this whole heap of guilt onto it as well. It's like saying when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. But I know a whole lot of people who could drown in the amount of lemonade they can make from the lemons they got, you know? And people don't say this, God won't give you more than you can handle. They don't say that to be mean. They don't say that to be rude. They say it out of the kindness of their hearts. It's meant to help. It's simply awkward because people don't know what to say. But saying something because you don't want to say nothing is really just for yourself, right? It doesn't really help those that you're trying and aiming to help. So this is what we have been taught to say to people who are hurting. Because it's true, right? Because it's biblical, isn't it? So another thing we're going to do here every week during this 8-week series, and don't put it up on the screen yet, is we're going to rate the truthfulness of each saying with the Wellspring Truthometer. We just completely stole it from Politico, so don't tell them. So I think this topic, God won't give you more than you can handle, where do you think this lands from completely false to completely true, and anywhere in the middle, where do you think this lands? Sure, 1 to 10. 10 being completely true, 1 being completely false. Where would it land? Halfway? Somewhere in the middle? Halfway, Jaren? Yeah? I'm going to give it 3, more towards the false. 4, okay. Okay, so so you can put it up now, Eli. I think when I put it in the Truthometer, it came out mostly false. And I think this for a few reasons. Because there is a phrase like this in Scripture. It is there, but it's not talking anything about suffering like it's being applied when people say it. So it's there. So if people were to use it in context, then it would be really true. But because they don't, I'm putting it as mostly false, but not completely false, because they still have a sliver of hope to use it the right way. So we're going to say the Wellspring Truthometer mostly false on this one. And here is why. What does the Bible actually say? So the passage that people are referring to most of the time when they say God won't give you more than you can handle is from 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13, which reads, "No temptation has overtaken you except what is common to humankind, and God is faithful and will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, God will also provide a way out so that you can endure it." This is the verse that people are quoting when they tell you God won't give you more than you can handle. But there's a striking difference between the two things, isn't there? What is this one talking about? Temptation. So, the word translated here as temptation, just in case you say this to anyone and they say, no, the Greek word means suffering. I'm just going to, it doesn't happen all the time, but just in case it does. The Greek word here translated as temptation is perismos. There you go, for all those of you who speak Greek. Just kidding, because I don't. But it says perismos. And what this can mean, one of two things: temptation to sin, or calamity or affliction, so suffering. But it cannot mean both at the same time. And it's up to the reader to figure out, based on the context of the verse, which meaning is being meant here. So let's look at the context of the verse. Can you put up the next one? So here is the majority of the verse. Okay, the section. Verse 6 talks about setting hearts on evil things. Verse 7 talks about idolaters. Verse 8, sexual immorality. Verse 9, testing Christ. Verse 10, grumbling. Verse 11 says, use these things as warnings. Why? Verse 12, so you can stand firm and not fall. Then we have our verse saying, these temptations are common to all of us, but God is faithful and will not give you more than you can bear, but provide a way out. And then it ends with, so do not be idolaters. It seems very clear to me that this verse is talking about temptations to sin. It lists multiple temptations. It says it over and over again. It warns you to stay away from them, to use them as warnings. It's clearly, to me, about sin. It's not speaking about hardship or suffering. Another thing that's interesting that we won't really dive into is it doesn't say that temptation is a sin, which is also interesting. That temptation is actually something all of us, it's common amongst humanity. But don't give in to the temptation. Don't give in to the sin. Because God will not give you more than you can bear. There will always be a way out of the temptation. So I find it really fascinating that the verse that people tend to quote to say that God won't give you more suffering than you can handle, more hardship than you can handle, is from 1 Corinthians, when 2 Corinthians actually says that Paul went through a hardship that was far beyond his ability to endure. In 2 Corinthians 1:8, we see this. Paul writes a letter to the church at Corinth. It's from him and Timothy. They're writing about things that they went through on their travels. And they say that God comforts us in troubles, and then they describe their own troubles. We don't know exactly what it is, but they say it was far beyond our ability to endure, so that we despaired of life itself. Indeed, we felt we had received the sentence of death. That sounds like a little more than someone can bear on their own, right? Far more than they could bear. So Paul continues. Paul and Timothy talk about how they got through this, but it wasn't on their own. It was by relying on the prayers and the help of other believers, and by relying on God from moment to moment. And this isn't the only letter in Corinthians, this isn't the only letter or part of the Bible that talks about needing to rely on others for help when you cannot endure things. We see this in how the church, the early church, acts. In the book of Acts, chapter 2, verses 44 and 40 through 47, we see that all who believed were together and all had their things in common. They would sell possessions and goods and distribute the proceeds to all as they had need. Day by day, they spent so much time together in the temple. They broke bread at home and ate their food with glad and generous hearts. It looks like this church looked out for those who had more than they could handle. There were some who were completely going without so that others sold property and possessions just to help. This is the church being the church. This idea that when people have more than they can handle, they reach out for help. We weren't created to live in isolation. The whole story of creation is one that we were created for community. One person was created, and it was not good for them to be alone. So God brought community. We were created for one another, and the church was created to help bear the heavy load. We are meant to carry things for one another. It's like you get this mental image. If you saw someone walking in here through the door carrying so many boxes that they could hardly walk and things were falling over, we would rush to help them, right? They were carrying more than they could handle themselves. And yet when people walk through the door of the church, carrying more than they can on their own, and they talk about it, we kind of tell them, well, God wouldn't give you more than you could handle that on your own, right? But why is that so different? Why is our response so different? I love this picture of the New Testament church. I think it's so beautiful. To sell a property, to sell your possessions, they don't have savings accounts in banks. This is what they have, and they're selling it to help each other. Because in life, we are given more than we can handle sometimes. That's why we live in community. That's why we ask for help. And I think back on being in high school, and there were a lot of things that happened in that high school. That's why I bring it up a lot. But I think about this, and I'm so glad I had other voices in my life that helped me through this. Because I chose to not go to Seattle. I changed last minute and stayed close to home, where I could be with my community as my dad went through his treatment and my family mourned the loss of a loved one. I'm really glad I did that because I really couldn't have handled it. When I expressed my need for help in prayer and someone said, God doesn't give you more than you can handle, it wasn't helpful. But do you know what is helpful? In this season of becoming a new parent, having life completely upended, and having to figure out how to do this whole new parent thing with this baby who you guys all know has reflux and can't sleep in his crib, and we had to hold him all night, and we've taken him in for x-rays and all sorts of different things. When I was so overwhelmed with that, what did help? You all bringing us meals. It was Dominique coming over and saying, I can take him in the morning and you can go rest. It was Mark Brewer offering to come and hold him during a night shift. It was my friend Danny flying out from Tennessee and staying for so long and holding him and taking night shifts so we could get some sleep. It was my mom driving up 2 hours every week so that she could help, and Leaf's mom taking him during the day so I could get something done. That's what helps, right? When you have more than you can handle, when you're in seasons that are just overwhelming, when your community shows up and helps. I think of Melanie coming over day after day just to sit with me and tell me I wasn't alone. I mean, that was so much more than I thought I even needed, and it was so great. And I know that Jonathan's going to call Becky Aunt Becky because she came over and just held him, and he screamed the whole time at her. And she was, like, not fazed by it at all. I was like, you're going to have to teach me how you do that, Becky, because it was amazing. When I voiced that I had more than I could handle in new parenthood, you all helped. That is the church. That is exactly the response that we need. We need to be that for each other. We're all going to be in those seasons, even if they're ones that pass really quickly, like new parenthood. But there's some that don't pass quickly, that might not pass at all. We need to be the people that show up and give help when we see it, give help when it's asked, or even maybe when it's not. We need to rely on God, yes. We are also called to be the hands and feet of God here. We need to be able to rely on each other. So God won't give you more than you can handle. It's a nice sentiment. I understand why people say it. It's not meant to be rude. But it's mostly false on the Wellspring Truth-O-Meter. Because it isn't biblical in the way that it's used. And in life, we really are given so many times more than we can handle on our own. But we are made for community, and the church is made to share the load. So when life gives you more than you can handle, reach out. Tell us. We will pray with you. We will show up. We will walk alongside you. And church, when someone says that to us, let's show up like we already do. Continue doing that. You do such good work here. And let's ask God to give us just enough to get through each moment by moment, especially in the community that God has placed us. Rather than giving someone a tired cliche, let's recognize the need and offer to help carry their load.